Miguel Sapochnik, Liam Cunningham, John Bradley, Natalie Emanuel, Conleth Hill, Sophie Turner, Iwan Rion, Faye Marseille, Isaac Hempstead Wright, and finally, Christian Nairn. I'd like to start with the elephant in the room. It's been announced that next season will only be 7 episodes and will not air until the summer. So I guess my first question to David and Dan is, why do you hate us all so much? This seems personal.
Well, you know, I guess as Sophie said in that clip, winter is here, and we got to shoot in places where there are trees, and we got to wait for the leaves to fall off. So we're actually waiting to shoot later in the year, and that means we don't finish shooting till February. There's no way to finish post. There's no way to get the show out there until summer. So.
That doesn't account for the 3 Sundays where I will have nothing to do at night. Can you walk me through that in front of 7,000 people and millions of people who are watching?
You can rewatch and start over at the beginning.
That's a good answer. So there's a plethora of human history to draw from, but is there any civilization or time period specifically that you guys draw the most amount of inspiration in terms of like quest for power, or even any kind of like Machiavellian real life characters throughout history that you can think of specifically?
Well, I think the books are sort of built on a skeleton of medieval Western history, but one of the great things about fantasy is that you're not bound to what happened. So George, when he wrote his books, got to pick all the bits that he liked the most, and he got to skip the so-and-so begat so-and-so begat so-and-so part of history. You got to kind of paper over that. And he drew on Mongols, he drew on Native Americans, he drew on everything. He was very deeply read in world history, and you know, and we get to do the same thing. I mean, that's one of the real joys of, we're kind of both history buffs, and we get to
recounting the violence of humanity.
Yeah, we get to just look at every awful thing that's happened in the world, not just one part of the world, and just cram it all into, you know, 10 hours, or 7 hours rather, a season.
I just want to point out that Sophie Turner made us all do shots of vodka before we came out here. So
I'm 20, I didn't do any of that.
Our answers might not be as articulate as they should.
Okay, good.
Just trying to keep it complete sentences. It's like, do a complete sentence, I know I'm still in shape.
Well, one of the things you guys just touched on was that that obviously you're drawing from source material, but season 6 was the first in which you would pass the books. So obviously next season will continue to do that. Can you talk a little bit about that process and you know, working with George to achieve, and how much of it is his vision versus how much of it that you guys want to do with the show?
Yeah, well, you know, some of it is still, it's still ultimately George's imagination that gave us these characters, that gave us this world. And 3 or 4 years ago, we were in Santa Fe talking to George, and he told us about where he was heading with the books, and that's when he told us the Hodor fate and the Hodor, where the name Hodor came from. And I just remember looking at Dan, it's George's fault. And I remember looking at Dan, and just, we were both so amazed and excited because it was so freaking cool. And one of the things that's brilliant about it is that this name, which has become almost a joke, you know, people make jokes about Hodor, and then ultimately you realize where that name comes from, and it's suddenly a tragic turn, and that's so George R.R. Martin. So, you know, hopefully we're still living out the spirit of you know, George's imagination, and even though we're beyond the books, think one thing that's fun is that George's books will be very different in some respects and the same in others, and I think they'll hopefully both the series and the books will be surprising to people who are reading or watching or whatever it is. So, Sophie Turner, her fault.
Sorry.
Well, I'm glad you brought something up because obviously, sadly, we lost one of the most beloved characters of the season and in all of television.
I know. It's tragic, isn't it?
How did you create such a lovable scamp? And what is it like to be America's sweetheart?
Sorry, what was that?
I'm such a lovable scamp.
Thank you, Sophie. I don't know. I mean, I think the key was that when we were discussing the character before we started shooting, that he had this kind of joy in everything that he does. So he's enjoying it. He's on the best time of his life, and he loves doing all this stuff. And that I think it kind of made him a bit funnier, I suppose. So he's not just some psychopath that's just One Direction. He's got a bit more about him. He's not in One Direction.